It's just so wonderful to be with you, right? In the middle of this time between stories, right? This time between worlds, as the coronavirus is flaring up again around the world, economies opened too soon, economies opened for good reason because lives were being shattered, because people were living paycheck to paycheck, because the loneliness and the destruction from the lockdown was massive. And so we tried to open up, and in many places the opening up was too early, and Corona's flashing again, flashpointing around the world. I'm in Miami, which is an epicenter. At the same time, there's enormously good news. If you think about the Black Death in Europe and the way the plague was interpreted and the years and years that it took and the devastation that it wrought, destroying almost half of Europe, with no understanding of how to engage it, right? We're at a place in which there are clinical trials happening around the world, at least 5 major clinical trials involving 30,000 people each. And there's a very good chance that before the end of the year, we're actually going to have a vaccine. That's shocking. That would mean, if you understand the progression of human history, that in a period of 10 or 11 months, the world community would have come together in some way, despite all of the incoherence and all of the failed systems. Nonetheless, the goodness and the drive for life and the coming together will in all likelihood produce a vaccine before the end of the year. That's shocking. That's from a historical perspective, unimaginable. So the evolution of consciousness and the evolution of intimacy, meaning the ability to become intimate, to know the world, to put parts together, to create new emergence in the sense of a vaccine and a sense of a healing and the sense of a cure, is gorgeous. And yet the breakdowns are real and the fault lines are real. And what Corona's actually shown is the fault lines in society, right? 2 or 3 times as many people from poor socioeconomic backgrounds have died through Corona than the more privileged and affluent. That's a violation of spirit. It's a violation of God's face. It can't be that way. The gap between have and have-nots, the fundamental failures in identity. Who am I when I'm not doing my job? The explosion of depression and loneliness and mental illness, and what they call, it's a formal name in medicine. It describes, I could give you the formal medical name, which people often do to sound impressive, but I'll spare it. There's 3 formal names, but it's nicknamed the broken heart syndrome, right? Which is a kind of experience. You feel like you're having a heart attack symptoms, but it's actually not a heart attack. It goes away in a few minutes, maybe a few hours, sometimes a couple of days. But that's actually flaring, right, dramatically higher than ever before. People's experience of depression, people's experience of radical loneliness is exploded. We're going to be talking about that today because these are the fault lines of a society. And I want to try and say something really clear for a second. This is our intention. Why are we here? We're here in one communion, right? This is our one communion, one church, right? One love, one communion. Many paths, one mountain, right? We're changing the world through a new set of first principles. First principles grounded in the ontologizing of love, knowing that love is real. Love is not weak, love is strong, love is real. Love is the eros of reality. And that actually the evolution of love is the evolution of politics. And the failure of love, the failure of eros, is the failure of politics. And there's no split between the two. The great lineage masters understood, and I want to share something with you, that actually there's no split between the political and the personal. We're going to actually articulate a new politics, right? A response to the pandemic that's about the potency of pleasure, the potency of love, right? That's about a new set of gorgeous first principles. And we're going to actually come together in a way that's actually unimaginable. But I want to just start with this intention. It's super exciting, super beautiful, and super critical. And it's got two sources. One is the Bible, the other is Wilhelm Reich, and the third is evolutionary thought. And one of the things we said here is that in First Principles, we bring together the best of premodern, so that would be an ancient biblical text, the best of modern, which is evolutionary theory, right? And postmodernity. Reich is leaning into, Wilhelm Reich, the therapist, is leaning into postmodernity. We're weaving the three into a new whole greater than the sum of the parts, a new set of First Principles, which are themselves a political, moral, social revolution of the heart. This is a revolution of the heart. This is an explosion of evolutionary love. It's an explosion of revolutionary love. And we're here as radical activists. We're here literally to change the source code. In this moment between utopia and dystopia, we're in this time between stories in which only a new set of First Principles, right, that blow our hearts open, that actually envision, David, right, you and I boxed this morning, envision a genuine democratization of enlightenment, a genuine democratization of greatness, right, a genuine opening of the world's heart, right, only a shift from Homo sapien to Homo amor, right, from an ego-driven, grasping win-lose metrics, right, to a new understanding based on First Principles, scientific First Principles, interior and exterior science, a new vision of a new human and a new humanity, a new vision of politics based on a planetary awakening in love through unique self-symphonies. So that's what we're talking about here. That's our intention. And I want to add a piece to our intention and deepen it for a second. Is that okay? I'm going to check in with you on the chat box, okay? Everyone with me? We together, friends? I'm in the chat box, okay? Are we good? Are we good? Who's with us? Who's here? Like, are we here for real? Or are we just showing up, going through the motions? Are we here for real? Right? There's a word in the ancient text which is hineni. Hinei. Hinei. Hineni means, right, all in, right, for realsies, right? Hineni. Whoever knows the word, spell it. There, you got it. Right? Chris read hineni. Hineni means I am here. Right? Shout, are you here? Yes. Claire, are you here? Kirsten, hineni. Right? We're here together, right? Hineni, I am here. I'm here. I'm showing up all the way. So here we go. Here's the intention. So there's a text that says, tell the story of leaving Egypt every day. Now that idea of tell the story of leaving Egypt every day is actually what they were doing at the Last Supper in Christianity. It's what the Passover Seder is in the Hebrew lineage. So it's the Last Supper, right? In Christianity, it's the Passover Seder. And it's this fundamental evening, which is about telling the story of leaving Egypt. Now stay with me. Telling the story of leaving Egypt is a historical telling. It's a historical event. It's about history. It's about activism. And what's the Exodus about? Remember Spartacus? Who remembers the movie Spartacus? Who was with it? He just passed away. Kirk Douglas. Was that Kirk Douglas? Right? Spartacus. Who remembers Spartacus? Let's date ourselves. Right? Oh my God, I wasn't born when Spartacus came out. Okay, Spartacus. Yes, says Shadi. Yes, Spartacus. Right? Remember the key scene in the movie, everybody? I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus. Who remembers that scene? So Spartacus is about the slave rising up. The writhing, rising slave challenging the status quo. Shut. I'm Spartacus. Right? I'm Spartacus, right? So Exodus challenges the status quo. Exodus says the fact that you're a slave in Egypt today doesn't mean you're going to be a slave tomorrow. The ancient world and the modern world are all about the status quo. You can barely break out. Right? The explosion all over the world today for justice, right, is that there's not an equal playing field, that the gap between the have and have-nots is too big. And that's in today's world where we know of social mobility. Right? In the earlier modern world, in the pre-modern world, wherever you were born, you died. You never changed. There was no mobility. There was no transformation. The status quo could never be challenged. So Exodus inserts into the bloodstream of humanity, I'm not bound by yesterday. That the greatest slave driver in the world is the belief that yesterday determines today. You got that? It's gorgeous. So my yesterday, and the only time I ever give up is when I realize, oh God, my yesterdays, there's too much of a pattern. I can't get out of it. I give up. That's when I stop being Spartacus. That's where I stop being free, right? The patterns got me. I can't find my way out. right? I'm stuck in the vortex, right? Then I'm a slave, right? Never resign yourself, right, to yesterday determining today. Never let go of the dream. Never let go of the vision, right? Never give up. So this is a political event. With me, it's a political event, and it's a political event about a new order of society, right? Exodus is about let my people go. Let's go to this new land and let's create a new way of living, right? A new way of being, a new way of prophecy, right? A new way of ethics, a new way of justice. It's a political event. At the same time, stay close. The mystics say that the word Mitzrayim, which is Egypt, and if anyone wants to write it in the chat box, it's Egypt is Egypt. Just we'll be able to see it in the chat box. Let's go a little high tech here. Who's got an Egypt for this day? Anyone in the chat box can give me an Egypt? Egypt. So the first word is Egypt, second word. And the second word, right, is Mitzrayim. Thank you, Claire. Thank you, Kirsten. Right? So Egypt is, right, in English. In Hebrew, it's Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim, M-I-T-Z-R-A-Y-M. Mitzrayim. Now stay close. So in the mystical traditions, every nation represents a different part of the body. Mitzrayim is the neck. Okay? So stay close. Now, the word Mitzrayim has another meaning. It's T-Z-A-R, tsar. Anyone want to catch that in the chat box? Anyone in the chat box for me? T-Z-A-R, tsar. And tsar means the narrow place or the contracted place or the pained place. So going out of Egypt, right, is moving beyond the contraction, moving beyond the pain, moving beyond the narrowness. It's being able to find my voice, but it's not my voice to complain. Right? It's not like the modern notion of finding my voice, the victim finding a voice. It's actually finding the fullness and delight in the midst of the servitude sometimes. Sometimes nothing changes, but I actually step in and I wake up and I can sing again, right? So when the words are trapped in my throat, but again, not the words of the victim's complaint, right? But the words of my joy, the words of my delight, right? The words of my song, when they're trapped, when I'm contracted, when I'm in my narrow places, I can't be free. So leaving Egypt is not just a political event. It's an event of leaving the contraction in my body and actually somatically, my body expanding. And I come home in my body, and I come home in my heart, and I come home in my soul. And I realize that my heart, my body, and soul aren't in any way split from each other. Thomas Hanna was a great somatic pioneer who understood this. He died early in a car crash after giving his first training. Through my body, we say, I vision God, says the book of Job. Through my body, I vision God. The body's alive, right? And when the body's awake and alive, I actually lift myself up out of oppression, right? I lift myself up out of slavery. So actually the political movement of moving beyond slavery, the political movement of telling the story of leaving Egypt, which is a political story, is also in the great lineages of Hebrew mysticism. It's also a personal, embodied, somatic, psychological, spiritual, mystical, existential, moving beyond my narrowness, moving beyond the patterns of yesterday, moving beyond my contraction. So the political and the embodied existential spiritual transformation are the same. There's no split between them. That's a big deal. That's what the lineage understood. The personal is political. That's what Wilhelm Reich understood. In his book on the mass psychology of fascism, he understood that actually the failure to be intimate with my own body, the failure to be intimate with my own heart body, and that failure exponentialized, right, by what he called, right, listen, little man, right? The sense of the little man, and by the little woman, meaning the person who's been so oppressed that they've actually lost their freedom, who's actually operating in this kind of conformity, right? Who actually has lost the sense of their own original gorgeousness, their own originality, the spark of their aliveness, because the contraction and the old pattern, right? And the false self and the false self voices are so oppressive, you can't break out of them, right? Can you get that? So Reich said that coded in the body is the political disaster. Coded in the body is the oppression of the structure of society. And if we want to create a new society, we got to create a new body. We got to create a new soma. We got to create a new heart, right? Vetnat lacha, right? I'll create for you a new heart, a pure heart, right? A new body, a pure body, right? A heart that breathes outrageous love, a body that understands the dignity of desire and knows how to clarify desire and reach for, right? Have few desires, but have great ones, said the Buddha. So the personal is political. The political is personal. Our intention here, and David's going to resonate the code, is to understand that the broken heart syndrome in Corona is actually just an expression of a deeper broken heart that's been living all over the world, right? Who are we? Are we not more than a win-lose metrics in a success story in which we've got to cover up the lingering, incessant pain, the pseudo-eros, what one writer, John Fowler, called the Nemo, right? The pseudo-eros, which we use to cover up, right, our failure to experience the fullness of our aliveness. All political disaster, all evil, all fascism, all authoritarianism, all forms of Nazism, right, come from the inability to actually experience the genuine eros of my unique embodiment, of my unique heart expression, of my deepest heart's desire. And when we create a society in which we exponentialize across and we iterate across the entire system that fundamental failure of eros, then actually all the evils and actings out, which are actually forms of pseudo-eros, dominate the system. And that's what generates pandemic, global intimacy disorder, no global coherence, no preparation, even though we know the pandemic's coming, allowing the most poor among us to be the most vulnerable. And that's somehow okay because we're cut off from the body politic and we're cut off from the body heart and the body soul of reality. We've got to retell the story, but not a fanciful way, not conjecture, not new age, not fundamentalism. We actually have to iterate a new set of first principles about how Homo sapien fulfills him herself in Homo Amor, this vision of the new human and the new humanity. And we got to start with the individual human being. The evolutionary human doesn't bypass the personal. They realize the personal is everything and it explodes into the political. So at the heart of the personal, and in the middle of COVID, we're all feeling it as loneliness, right? And depression and hurt.